Now, a weather update from the 4-Zone Weather Team, sponsored by Carabin Shaw.
All right, here 4 minutes after 1 o'clock on this Sunday morning. Around the area, you can see we've had some recent rain, freezing rain. The temperature's 30 in San Antonio moving through, so all roads remain wet. The glazing has been on elevated surfaces, cars and trucks outside, and decks, sidewalks, a little bit of iciness, fences, things of that nature have a pretty decent glaze on them. You can see there's in Gonzales, 28 degrees, and in Kerrville right now, really pretty quiet at the moment. That's a light accumulation of sleet that is on the ground. And what's interesting to know is the temperature's actually been inching up. So almost back to freezing there around the rim and Helotes, Leon Valley, 30, 32 out there towards Lackland, Kelly Field here. The feel on that is probably that earlier sleet we had, the melting of it, could actually release a little bit of stored heat energy and latent heat and bump the temperature up. So a little bit of science that's happening here perhaps. But it's helping in terms of the sleet. All right, we're not above freezing, we're 30 degrees, but you're noticing not as much sleet around the area, not as many reports of that. It's more of liquid that's falling. That's freezing rain when it's below 30 on elevated surfaces primarily here. So this is an important look at the temperatures. 20s and low 30s. It's come up quite a bit, although Rock Springs remains at 18 degrees, hasn't moved an inch. In fact, it dropped a degree. All right, so this is primarily now freezing rain. You're not seeing the ice pellets, the sleet like we had a little bit earlier. This is a moderate patch of rainfall stretching across Bexar County, and I'll set this in motion here for you, and you can see this batch moving in. Notice there's another batch that's coming into Medina County, so we'll be just sort of reinforcing these periods of freezing rain, and on occasion, if the temperature starts to go back down, you can think about introducing some sleet back into the area. But right now, this is just glazing on the elevated surfaces. Had a report come in from Bulverde of about 5/100ths of an inch of some new ice glazing that has occurred here from this batch that's been moving through here. So again, there you see it moving across Bexar County right up into New Braunfels. There's Garden Ridge, Selma, seeing this moderate freezing rain, some Calaveras Lake, some patches down here too, heading towards Seguin. So you see all these little patches that we have in our eastern zone, and some of this is developing. Floresville, you see that's going to be moving up in this general direction towards Seguin. Pleasanton is getting into a batch here as well. Back west, where we had a little bit of a lull, now you're starting to see again more freezing. Now this will be freezing rain and sleet, where it's colder. The cold air is a little more deeply entrenched. 18 degrees in Rock Springs. You know, there could even be some snowflakes mixing in. And that's what you see here with our winter radar here, trying to estimate and calculate in terms of what's falling there. And then to the north with it's colder. This is sleet and maybe even still occasionally a little snowflake. But this is all moving back into the hill country where roads have been really pretty much covered over. Travel's a little bit more slippery up here through the hill country because you've had a little bit more sleet through the event. And then down around Bexar County, the road's primarily wet so far, and haven't had a lot of reports on the bridges just yet. So we've kind of been holding our own. Where I've had bridges that are icing over in spots is up in Comal County, especially into Hays County here over the past few hours. I do want to point out, you probably heard thunder down here in Zavala County. That's a thunderstorm that we have putting out a little lightning. So that's a pretty dynamic system over the big system that's out to the west to be able to produce thunderstorms over this Arctic air mass that we have. And that may throw out a burst of perhaps some sleet, some dynamic cooling from a thunderstorm. And so we'll watch that and, see if we can get another lightning strike or two, Medina into Bexar County from this little batch here as it's lifting here off to the northeast. Here you see some more activity to the west from Del Rio. Had some lightning strikes here too. Did you see those? So it's really impressive to see here. And that's all moving to the northeast, mixed in with occasionally some lightning strikes. Earlier was thunder sleet in Austin. So notice we don't have that much green on there. And again, green, that's just plain rain. There is no icing on elevated surfaces. And so you have to go really way down south to get back above freezing here. So we're around freezing or below all across our area. And then the Houston area to the east is still above freezing here. So right now, again, we're enduring this here for about the next 3 hours, 3 or 4 hours or so, these patches, before it finally tapers off. All right, so there's the driver for all this. And again, providing some pretty dynamic lift right over us to get these random lightning strikes that we have here. And then look at this. I'll just step over here to the side. I mean, it's almost to New York City now, snowing in the nation's capital. They're back to St. Louis, near Chicago, Columbus, Ohio, Nashville in it. This is massive, this system here, and the flow of Pacific moisture working over this Arctic air mass is just an unbelievable setup, meteorologically speaking here. It's one for the record books to get something of this size with its impacts across a massive area. All right, bring it back home here, and let's show you future radar. This is now jumping ahead just a little bit here to 1:30, so about 20 minutes from now. You see, this is that batch I was highlighting down to the southwest, kind of moving back over Bexar County. And do want to point out, this will reinforce the wet roadways. And should later tonight, we see a little bit more of a push of some cold air try to come back down, and roads and bridges, those overpasses are still wet. There's more opportunity for some freezing on those surfaces. So this, instead of drying out and having dry roadways, this kind of dampens everything once again, as it's moderate rainfall, moderate freezing rain. And then, of course, keep in mind, too, your car or truck's going to have a thick glaze waiting for you in the morning if it's been parked outside like mine is. There you see eastern zone with the patches of some freezing rain. 3 in the morning out here, this is sleet, freezing rain, or even some snowflakes. And then notice as we take this now to a 4 to 4:30, still in the hill country. And you kind of get the idea here as we go from 6 o'clock thereafter. We'll start with some clouds, and then we break into that sunshine. And that'll make a huge difference tomorrow. It's still a cold day, but just to have the sun back will kind of warm you up, and it also will have a big impact on the roadways. In fact, I want to show you, I've updated this here. My expectation is I'm just going to keep the caution flag out because I can't rule out a bridge, an overpass getting a little iciness here. But right now, the roads by and large have been wet outside of the hill country where there's a little bit more, and I probably should have kept this more slick from 1 to 3 o'clock here. But it's as we go through right around about daybreak, if the temperature does drop down towards 24, 25 degrees, there's a little bit more opportunity for some iciness to develop. And then, 8 o'clock and through mid to late morning, I expect roads to really improve greatly. So if you're going to be out and about through much of the day on Sunday, you really should be in a pretty good shape. Then it just becomes a temperature forecast. The wind chills, when you take the air temperature and still the gusty wind hitting 20 miles an hour or higher, make it feel like it's the single digits in the teens. Of course, the worst of it is up there into the hill country, where it can be below 0 to 5. And then during the day, it's still a little windy, hitting 20 to 30, 20, 25, 30 miles an hour with the wind gust. So that will take a little off in terms of what it feels like to you, and keep it like it's in the 20s in terms of what it feels like when you remove that layer of body heat with the wind. And then Monday morning with clear skies and still a little bit of a breeze Monday morning, and we're down into the upper teens, that would drop us into the single digits. And so those are the forecast wind chills across our area, around 0 into a Kerrville here. All right, I'm going to wrap this up here, and let's get you back over. I want to show you one more time here before I leave you on this expanded coverage here of what's happening now, what's ahead of us here. I just want to leave you with the radar view. Let's take this in. And here again, you can see some of the patches here that'll be moving in. We have this big batch here that's going to be cutting across for the next hour or two across Bexar County, and that's going to be predominantly freezing rain. We'll see if we do get a little bit more sleep, but right now with the temperature around 30, 31, that's just going to be pure liquid that freezes on elevated surfaces. The sleep potential is higher now to the north around the Austin area, here Kerrville to Rock Springs. This is an area that still could support some sleet. But we still have just a little more to go, another 3 or 4 hours, and then we'll shut it down for you here. Of course, don't forget you can visit us at news4sa.com, also our YouTube channel and Facebook. We will continue to provide coverage here for you through this winter storm and the half-hour updates right here on News 4.